The Seedance model, the camera movement, the action shots, the performance.
Choreography, stunts, it's all there.
Hollywood isn't reacting, it's fracturing.
No media will be static. No media will be linear. It'll all be adaptive to us.
They're not democratizing anything. They're consolidating power, turning their IP libraries into computational weapons.
It used to take a team of 100 people. Now one person can do it.
This isn't adoption. It's panic dressed as strategy.
At what point do the production studios then just say, well, we don't actually need to film anything anymore. We actually have enough to just prompt from scratch.
This is going to be disruptive.
Welcome to Amplified Intelligence, the podcast where we help you keep up with the sci-fi future we are all currently living in. Everything's moving faster than ever, and each week we're trying to break down the bleeding edge technologies that are fundamentally rewriting our reality. Today we're opening up a massive research dossier on what we're calling the synthetic media singularity. We're going to be discussing the earth-shattering launch of ByteDance's Seedance 2 video generator, Hollywood's frantic legal scramble to survive, and the profound sort of existential danger that, media studios like the one I run are kind of facing right now. So, Pietro, I'd love to just get a real quick sort of feeling temperature check on generational video, generational entertainment, and how you feel about it.
Oh boy, I've got lots to say about this. As you know, John, this is what we've been doing at Transitional Forms for a long time. I've kind of based my career on interactive media and like nonlinear media. And I think that, it bothers me when we talk about slop and how it's just, it's just going to fill a bunch of servers with nonsense. I think that there's so much more power to like do things that we've never done before in media, to unlock human imagination. That there's a whole camp of things that I'd love to talk about there. But ultimately, I think we're in an ugly baby stage of media right now, where we're trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. When TV came out, it was like radio on TV. Right.
Right.
And
yeah. When theater was on TV.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're just kind of transplanting all the ecosystems and the mechanisms and the way that traditional media, and I'll say traditional media as like linear flattened media. We're trying to fit AI media, generative media, dynamic media in that box, and it's not working. And so people are getting freaked out. But the future, it's going to be very different. There's going to be no media will be static. No media will be linear. It'll all be adaptive to us. And the ecosystems don't exist now to serve that media, to have everything be a real-time simulation, but that's coming, and it'll all make sense when that hits. But until we get there, it's going to feel awkward and weird.
I think I feel, similar to you, the work that I do day to day, having run a video production and animation studio for a really long time. We came up in like the YouTube world, right? We came up in the sort of like creator culture. And a lot of what we were doing at the time, especially in the early days on YouTube, like when our studio first started working on Crash Course and shows like that, and they started, getting really popular, it was kind of like, oh, like anyone can produce content now. And, there was this sort of like really beautiful enablement where, you didn't have to be a big production television studio anymore. You didn't have to be a big film studio anymore.
And you could get it right to the audience directly. Yeah. Like what a revolution.
Go direct to the audience. Yeah. And
John, you're being shy because you were a pioneer of that space. Like what you did with Crash Course and at Thought Cafe, you guys really pioneered that medium, and you see it being replicated everywhere now. So I hope you guys are super proud of that.
No, absolutely. It was a really incredible time. And I think that there's a new generation of that's going to come out of these new generative tools.
Yes. Absolutely.
We sit at an interesting place where I think, from my standpoint, I love everything about the capabilities of the generative tools, the generative video. But I am still a bit aghast at the sort of intellectual property issues around, like,
of course,
what was this stuff trained on? Was there any permission for that? About a year ago, I think I was like, well, there's no way that there's not going to be huge IP challenges to some of this content, to some of these foundation model companies that are, creating these models. But I'm sort of not sure that that's actually going to happen. It's sort of like the Wild West. There's sort of this idea right now in sort of the world of AI that it's a race and we have to allow for like no regulation and like we can't worry about all of these problems. And so let's just go. So I think that really creates a feeling amongst myself and probably amongst, our collaborators, our employees, like our illustrators, animators, like everybody, where we want the enablement and the excitement and the creative ability that these tools give us.
Yeah.
But we're worried about like betraying the artists and, incredible creatives that sort of these models are kind of ripping off in a way.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
And we kind of feel protective of each other as creatives too. We need to value the human craft that went into training these models more than we are. But what did you say you wouldn't think would happen?
I guess I just assumed that there would be a flurry of like legal action from film distribution companies, from rights holders, from IP holders, and I just don't know that that's actually going to happen.
Right? Yeah.
And
unless they're just taking one at a time. Like, okay, we'll attack Suno while you guys attack OpenAI,
right?
And you guys go for Google, and you guys go for Midjourney. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, like, it's very clear, that when you look at some of these models, that they're trained on, IP that they've just taken from YouTube or they've just taken from, videos that exist somewhere. And I think that's just a challenge, right? I know we've both explored this a lot, but there's such a difference between the big foundational models, like the one we're going to talk about today, Seedance 2, and, something like a Adobe Firefly video model, which, they've come out and said, we're only training this on, video and content that we have rights to.
Yeah.
Though there's some questions around that. So, it's still a little bit loose, but there's such a difference between those outputs. Like one is like barely usable because it's not trained on enough.
Yeah.
And then the ones that are really great and are amazing tools, you're like, well, I'm ripping off all these people that didn't agree to have their content trained.
Yes. It's a dilemma for sure. And you're right. There's a huge difference between those models now.
One of the interesting things about like what we want to talk about, with our supportive amplification agent today, is really like, I think we've all been watching these video models progress, and I think it's been kind of like a fun little joke for the moment, right? Like, I love that my nephew or my cousin or my aunt can kind of make a funny video for like a birthday gift or like a, birthday card, using Sora or something. I think that's hilarious, right? I think having stuff on social media, like, I think that's fine as long as you're not trying to do some sort of like, political deep fake or something. But I think this release of some of the clips we're going to watch today really sort of turn the page, certainly for like Hollywood high-end blockbuster productions, where it's like, oh no, this is no longer like kind of AI slop that's, visible a mile away.
Yeah. This isn't for holiday cards. This is going to be disruptive.
This is a product that you can make for, probably a few $1,000s of time, a few $100s of time with a a good creative potentially that normally would have cost $1 million. We're talking about an exponential shift in cost.
Yes.
And democratization. And I think Hollywood should be, very concerned about that. But at the same time, to what you were talking about later, maybe that means we're just going to get way more movies and way more stuff.
Yeah. Movies and books never went away, when the internet came out. Candles never went away when the light bulb came out. Movies will always be there. Theater will always be there. It might even be, it will be more celebrated as a special, the craft of it and whatnot. That goes to with any human art. I think that like paintings will become more valuable in a world where anyone can push a button and make a painting. The craft and the value of the art isn't going to go away, but this is this disruptive moment to figure out what's next and how media evolves in a new format that's not competing with movies at all.
So yeah, let's get sort of a little brief kind of breakdown of some of the research that we put into today, and jump into talking a little bit with our amplification friend.
No name yet. We need to name this.
Yeah, Ampy makes sense. But
Yeah,
I don't know if it's just too like fun.
It gets dark. It gets real.
Right, yeah. So let's jump into talking a little bit about the research that we looked at today, and then we'll hop into talking to Ampy about what they think about Seedance 2 and this whole situation. Okay, so before we dissect this synthetic media singularity we've been talking about, it's time for the segment we call Loading the Matrix. We really value transparency over hype, so the exact data ingested to build today's knowledge base is located in the links of the show notes. We organize our research into 3 camps, so let's jump in and load the matrix. So in the 4 camp this week, we have advocates building our automated future. The prime source is from the Andreessen Horowitz State of the Generative Media 2026 report, which details how enterprises are now chaining AI models together to generate massive volumes of media at basically zero cost. We rounded this out with some technical breakdowns from DataCamp and NVIDIA, which obviously championed the sheer cost-saving efficiencies of multimodal power and tools like Seedance 2. So in the against camp, really the resistance fighters that are in some ways fighting for their livelihoods, or at least that's sort of the fear that is spreading around the industry right now, is kind of anchored in this human artistry campaign that's come around, which is called Stealing Isn't Innovation. It's an initiative cross-referenced with the WGA, the SAG-ACTRA union policies, mainstream crisis reporting from AP News, and unfiltered existential dread scraped from subreddits, just to map out the sort of brutal realities of copyright theft, labor displacements, and what's happening kind of in like the VFX industry as these new generative tools kind of take over. And then section 3, the outliers, the pragmatists that are adapting to survive. I think this is kind of where we sit, maybe like a foot in both places. Maybe you're in a little bit in one way and I'm a little bit in the other. The standout here is really a legal analysis from Dunlap, Bennett, and Ludwig, detailing how Matthew McConaughey has successfully trademarked the exact audio waveform of his catchphrases so that he can sue AI voice cloners. We also pulled from, federal No Fakes Act, financial reporting on Netflix, quietly acquiring Ben Affleck's AI startup for $600 million, sort of proving that the mega rich and some of the big streamers and distribution companies are really weaponizing this tech to make sure that they're going to be able to build proprietary closed loop like fortresses of media. So that's this week's Matrix Loaded. Let's get into it and see what this all means for human expression. So first things first, Pietro, let's watch some of the viral videos that have been coming out and presented later. For any listeners, we'll try to sort of annotate in real time what we're seeing, but obviously the video version will show this content on screen. Here is I think probably the biggest clip that really went viral first. And this is a fight that was choreographed between Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. So this is
Seedance 2.
This is Seedance 2, absolutely. This is sort of what broke the internet when this simple 15 seconds got released.
You killed Jeffrey Epstein, you animal! He was a good man! He knew too much about our Russia operations. He had to die, and now you die too.
So, yeah, I mean, It looks exactly like them.
It does. I wonder how it'll hold up in the future. Cause like when people first saw King Kong
Totally.
climbing a building, it didn't look like a guy in a monkey suit, you know,
Mhm.
it blew their mind. So maybe in the future we'll be like, oh, that's totally, you know, that's totally fake. But that is super convincing to me.
Yeah. The expressiveness in the performance feels very much like how Brad Pitt would perform this moment. That's part of it that's a bit kind of shocking as well. And I do think in a later episode, we'll get into the whole like Tilly Norwood kind of avatar replacement or digital avatar thing. But the fact that the Seedance model, the camera movement, the action shots, the performance in a way that just feels like it was shot with an incredible action DOP, performed with incredible actors, edited by an incredible editor, like all these things. There's
The sound
music,
design,
sound
the
design, like
choreography, stunts, like it's all there.
it's all there and it's very intense. Let's hop into another one here. This is a cool one. This is a clip from, I think somebody was like, let's make a better ending for Game of Thrones.
Oh, thank you.
Let's just watch
Yeah,
this
we all
briefly.
appreciate that.
So we see Daenerys getting off her dragon, and Jon Snow is there, and they get married, and they're happy instead of like, you know, the opposite of what actually happened in the
everyone
show.
lives happily ever after ending.
Yeah, and I mean, the dragon looks great. You know,
It does.
the characters look great. I'm not really sure. Like, obviously, this stuff can get better, but you know, I was speaking to someone recently, and like, even the most expensive VFX, you know, was never perfect.
Yeah.
Like it was always bad in a way. Like you could always pause something and look
Pause
at
something, go frame
Yeah.
by frame.
it. Yeah. And so when you're looking at an output like this and it's orders of magnitude cheaper to produce, like that's just going to have such a detrimental, such a disruptive impact
Yeah.
to all the people that, you know, work on this type of content.
I agree. I mean, even the color grading is exactly Game of Thrones. Like
Totally.
that's work.
Yeah. It's wild. The whole feeling of it, the shots, everything. Let's jump into another one here. This is pretty crazy. This is like a Spider-Man fight. Oops. Sorry. Hold on. Let's get back to this.
Wow.
And I mean, this feels like a scene that Marvel would create, right? Like, I think one of the things that was always really cool about the Marvel films was like they did have pretty great kind of action choreography. There was some really cool stuff that they were able to visualize. I think that you know, like some of the Doctor Strange stuff that they did was really, really cool. I think that as they got further along in their phases, they really started to do some incredible VFX work. But also in just the choreography of how the action and the shots happened, right? It really came to its own kind of visual language. And this just nails it. It just knows exactly how it should look and how it should be. Like there's beats and there's pacing
Totally.
and there's movement to the camera that matches the movement of the action. There's momentum, you know, to the animation and to the shots. It's quite.
Now, I've
Quite
never used
level.
Seedance too, but like, I wonder what kind of artistry goes into making something like this. Not to upplay or downplay anything like, you know, that,
Totally.
oh, no, you know, a real artist made this. No,
Yeah,
but
totally.
what I'm trying to point out is, sure, it used to take a team of 100 people to do that scene in CG, and before that it would have been impossible to do practically. Now one person can do it, but like, does that just mean movies are going to get better and crazier? Or are we going to be able to do things that we could have never done on CG that we can't even imagine yet? Like there's an art form here is all I'm pointing out. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I know when it first came out, people were like, oh, well, we don't know exactly how it's being prompted
Sure.
or who's
Yeah.
doing what. And there hasn't been enough public access. But having actually spoken to someone who had access, it's legit. And it's quite easy to get really, really good effects. Now,
Wow. Amazing.
again, it's pretty obvious what all this stuff was trained on. It was trained on everything.
Yeah, totally. Clearly Marvel movies are in there.
Yeah, clearly. So let's jump in to see what Ampy thinks about all this, because I think that's going to be a good starting point. Okay, so both Pietro and I are very involved in the creative industries, and we are interested to hear, a bit of a summary of the research we gave you and how Hollywood is really reacting to this Seedance 2 Marvel.
Think about it like this. Hollywood isn't reacting, it's fracturing. The studio saw that Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt rooftop clip, 15 seconds, 2-line prompt, photorealistic carnage, and the entire executive layer realized the game board just flipped. Netflix dropped $600 million on Ben Affleck's Interpositive, not because they love innovation, but because they're terrified of obsolescence. Adobe builds Firefly Foundry so Disney can lock their IP behind proprietary walls. This isn't adoption. It's panic dressed as strategy. The mega studios, they're building fortresses, training models on their own archives, automating 60% of post-production, slashing dubbing costs by 80%. They're not democratizing, they're consolidating. Meanwhile, the middle class of Hollywood, VFX artists, junior editors, sound engineers, they're watching the apprenticeship pipeline collapse in real time. So you've got this bizarre paradox. The barrier to entry drops to the cost of electricity, but the economic viability of being a human artist craters simultaneously.
Okay. That's, as usual, a little bit too perfect on the nose of how I was feeling about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, same here. My heart does go out to that, what was called the middle class,
Yeah.
of Hollywood, like the people just coming out of school or had trained for something and just starting their career and that type of thing. But at the same time, like, look at the opportunity in front of you, so my heart goes out to those people. That's heartbreaking. My heart does not break for Tom Cruise or the big Hollywood companies, because it's the end of an era.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, you did great. You did great. Yeah. And this is why your face is in this, because you're top of your game.
Absolutely.
And
the
in
most
the future,
popular actor of all time.
Exactly. And if Marvel movies didn't, make billions and billions of dollars, they wouldn't have been the example. So like, I think we're too early for this right now, but in the future, when something like this will happen, you'll be like, oh, the fact that my image or my voice or my style is being used means I've made it. It means I'm in culture. It means I'm top of my game, and people will want that in the future. They won't feel ripped off, or that they're now losing money because of it. They'll celebrate it being they'll celebrate being the example, because it means your movies are great. It means your personal brand is great.
Yeah.
So it's a paradigm shift that's coming. But yeah, my heart goes out to those the people starting their careers right now. But there's tons of opportunity for them.
Some of the kind of studio tools that are coming out and that, obviously we've played around with, are leaning into like less about, hey, just prompt something like lazily, and more about like, give me some ingredients. Have your production designer like show me exactly what the background should be. Like do some research around developing that, right? Build your character, in a way that it works for this place, or potentially do, a live action recording on a sound stage, and then transfer that action, use that action as the motion transfer for the generative model to kind of transfer onto the character.
Yes.
A lot of these processes are, very similar to what was happening in VFX before. right? It's just that, you know, the cost of entry or the cost of going from idea to output has just been crushed.
Yeah.
And so when you have an industry that, you know, survives off of the sort of linear progression from script to production design to shot to editing to, you know, compositing to lighting to, you know, 3D to, you know, matte painting, like all this stuff in between there, and all of a sudden that's compressed down into new pipelines and new processes. This type of pivot, this type of change is incredibly disruptive.
Where I went while you were saying that is like, my mind imagined what would a movie look like if you took that same 100-person team and empowered them with this technology. What would that movie look like? And sure, what speed would it be produced at? Great, time is money. But like, what creative potential would come from 100 people using this and aligning, and the new pipeline, to your point, there was a pipeline that worked for, you know, 100 years now. What does that new pipeline look like? And how what would a big studio production look like empowered with this technology? No idea.
One thing that excites me about it, and I know you're gonna love this because you and I have dreamt of this kind of media for a long time, but you know, one of the issues with branching narrative, kind of live storytelling where the audience has a say in what a character does or what action on screen happens or what choices somebody makes, have basically up until now been like sort of prohibitive to produce. Because, you know, I know you've done some branching work before, as have I, but like every time you have a decision, right, you break out into 2 to 3 new paths, and those paths become exponential, and there's all sorts of ways of kind of corralling that and like controlling that, and there's sort of you know, ways to produce that, but it's not double the amount of content. It ends up being 10 times the content, 20 times the content, 100 times the content.
Yeah.
And so when I look at some of these new technologies and some of what we saw, it's like, man, that's going to actually be very possible. You take a team, right, that can make 2 hours, and now you're like, hey, with the new tools, you can make 20 hours.
Yes.
Right? You can make 200 hours.
Yep.
All of a sudden now those branching narrative, you know, put the decisions of whether Luke turns to the dark side or not in the control of the audience in that moment in the theater or at home on TV, however you want to have that interaction. I think that's kind of a really exciting part of this for me.
That's a great point in terms of the new media that this will produce, right? Like, okay, so you like your 1.5-hour movies, you like the Marvel universe, great. So now we're creating movies that, to your point, John, we can have the audience control, or go back and watch again, change one little factor, and, you know, or be, you know, I always think of lean back or lean forward experiences.
Totally.
So you're fully lean forward, you're changing everything, you're making different decisions, and there are thousands and millions of permutations of what this movie could do. That is also, that is exactly what this technology can lead to, but that's also going to require us to evolve our thinking around the medium as well, because it's not going to be, we're not going to just create flattened, a trillion flattened videos, you know, and sew them together. It's going to have to be volumetric. It's going to have to be real time. It's going to have to be done in a game engine or a world model, probably a world model. God bless you, game engines, but watch out.
Yeah, that's another episode.
That's another episode. Yeah. But we're seeing like this, like rendered media showing what the future of that like real time generative media is going to be. And it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, really, really exciting. I want to jump into the Netflix play and a bit about like what's going on there, because I'm not sure, like that kind of happened a little bit subtly.
Remind me what happened.
Yeah, I want to talk to sort of Ambi about this, and we'll get a little setup for us.
Let's amplify our intelligence.
Okay, so we want to dive a little bit deeper into this sort of ghost AI company that Ben Affleck was producing. I know that he's come out and he's talking about how this is a much more ethical approach to using AI in filmmaking. I want to get a general sort of summary of what exactly his company, was built for and why Netflix would just, throw $600 million at it, what it really means for the industry.
Yeah, so Interpositive is fascinating because it represents this very specific corporate strategy that's emerging, what I call the walled garden approach to AI filmmaking. Think about it like this. Most generative AI models are trained on the entire internet, right? They scrape billions of images, videos, copyrighted films, everything. That creates this massive legal minefield. What Affleck's team figured out was, what if you flip that model entirely? What if a studio trains an AI exclusively on footage from their own production? Here's the mechanics. A Netflix show shoots for 3 months, generates hundreds of hours of raw footage, lighting setups, actor performances, different angles. Interpositive ingests all of that, learns the exact visual language of that specific project, and then automates the tedious post-production work. Wire removal, relighting scenes, even generating alternate takes of performances that were never actually filmed. It's working entirely within the controlled universe of that one production. Netflix threw $600 million at it because this solves their two biggest problems simultaneously. It slashes post-production costs by up to 60%, and it sidesteps the entire copyright nightmare. No lawsuits from actors whose faces were scraped without consent. No union battles over stolen likenesses. It's AI, but it's their AI, trained on their footage under their legal control. But here's what makes me uneasy. What happens to the humans who used to do that work?
Yeah, so
they die. We kill them.
yeah,
Ampy,
they're not involved
sorry.
anymore.
We don't talk about them anymore, Ampy.
Ampy, so negative always. But I mean, this is part of that reality, right? It's funny, actually. I didn't really even realize how relevant that sort of concept would be to what we were talking about the branching narratives.
Yeah.
Because if you film an entire movie and all sorts of different takes and all sorts of different characters and all sorts of different scenarios and lighting and camera angles, then you can kind of maybe generate all those different moments thereafter.
Sure. Yeah. If you have enough content.
To me, the ethical play of this is just a mask. What I love about it is it's a transitionary approach, right? It's like, no, we're still going to film the same way we were. We want that art. We want that human touch. We want that craft, right? But, remember everything used to be fix it in post? This is going to be fix it in post times a million.
Yeah, totally. It's all post.
Yeah, it's
Only
just going to
post.
become so much post. And there's going to be less work there, absolutely, because so much of it will be able to, they'll be able to successfully generate a lot of the final product. So yeah, it's almost like this like Band-Aid solution, right? Because inevitably Netflix is going to love this. The production studios are going to love this because everything's going to be way cheaper, right?
Yeah.
Everything's filmed on sound stages. You don't have to visit any sets. Everything is sort of like these, either generated sets or 3D sets that are then used and, go into the system. And so the cost breakdown there, like of production is, let's say it goes down by 50%, right? 30%, maybe it goes down by 60%, 70%, significant amount of the budget. So production companies are going to love that. Distribution companies are going to love that. And to be honest, unfortunately, what actually matters is the audience is going to love that, because they're going to get so much more content.
And it'll be customizable and
Totally.
endless.
But the fear, I think, is like, but at what point in the next 5 years do the production studios then just say, well, we don't actually need to film anything anymore. We've done this 100 times or on 200 shows, and like we actually have enough to just prompt from scratch, right? So then they've created a walled garden where they're like, we have an amazing model and we're just going to make our own stuff. And it's not going to be open source. It's going to be just theirs. The same problem is going to like live on through there. So my opinion on this is like, it is a kind of cloaked kind of bridge to the same end result.
Oh, you don't need a taxi cab plate. Come drive for Uber until we use all your data to train autonomous vehicles, and then you've lost your job.
And then
too.
we don't need human drivers anymore.
The other mask, I think that's happening, and like I feel weird challenging them about this, but like I don't think they got to be using a model somewhere. They got to be fine tuning.
Yes,
there is a base model there that is still powering the thing that you're saying you're standing up against, you know.
Totally.
And I feel like that's a wolf in sheep's clothing move, you know. There's no way they have their own foundational model.
No,
they're fine tuning someone else's model that was trained on stolen stuff. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing answer to this. I appreciate it, and I appreciate, like,
for the industry, I think it's good, you know.
Yeah, it is.
Stops the bleeding a bit.
Totally. And I think that there's a real artistic value to that too, especially like in the illustration world, or you're making a game and you just want to make all the assets, and then, you know, and everything looks like your game, you know, that's amazing.
Totally.
But underlying it is still the model that you're telling everyone that you're fighting against.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and now I just want to hop into the conversation around what Disney's doing with Adobe Firefly Foundry, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with or not.
No.
Adobe Firefly has their own base model. They've claimed that it's only trained on either photos that they own, or imagery that they've gotten permission to train with. They've now teamed up with a few different big IP holders to say, hey, let's do a foundation model for your IP. And Disney's one of those big players, and let's see what Ampy has to say about that. Tell us a bit more about this Adobe Firefly Foundry play, specifically who's involved, and, you know, why they're taking these steps forward to build their own foundation models.
Yeah, so Adobe Firefly Foundry is essentially the corporate fortress response to the AI tsunami. Picture the mechanics. Disney, Warner Brothers, the legacy titans sitting on vaults of copyrighted gold, decades of footage, character designs, proprietary visual language. They watched the open source chaos unfold, saw their IP getting scraped into training sets without permission, and realized they needed to build their own moats. Firefly Foundry lets these mega studios train secure, proprietary AI models exclusively on their own legally vetted archives. No contamination from the open web. No risk of generating Mickey Mouse with the wrong glove stitching because the model trained on fan art. The players involved are the usual suspects. Disney's obviously the flagship case, but anyone with a massive back catalogue and the capital to build custom models. They're not democratizing anything. They're consolidating power, turning their IP libraries into computational weapons that smaller studios and independent creators simply cannot compete with. Wild how the democratization narrative completely inverts when you follow the money.
Ampy, you're the life of the party. You're a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day.
So much salt.
Weapons.
Wow. It's funny because I recently had a conversation with a tech guy at Adobe about Firefly Foundry and what they're doing. We have a massive library of IP that we've developed 100%. Over the last 12 years. And yeah, we're always looking at that as well. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Like, is Disney and these companies, are they creating these models so that they can then, you know, use them and then finally do those lawsuits that I was talking about and be able to prove, like, hey, we've done this and we're doing this for our IP. Our IP shouldn't show up anywhere else. And it's showing up here, right?
Yeah.
Is that sort of part of the play, do you think?
It totally could be. And I also wonder how, like, they mentioned like fan created art, and like Ampy mentioned that. And I wonder if this is for the fans or if this is just to make production cheaper. Like what I'd love to see is Disney come out with a model where we can make our own Disney content, and we can explore ideas, and we can send that to our friends, and it can become popular, and Disney comes to us and says, hey, great idea, we're going to make that a artificial lore. Like that is
Absolutely.
the future of entertainment.
Yeah.
But is that what big companies like Adobe and Disney and the rest of them are trying to do? Or are they just walling a garden more and more and more?
I agree with you 100%. One of the conversations we've been having internally is like, can we create a model that then we like offer to education providers,
Yeah.
not necessarily the big publishers, but like teachers, education providers to be able to just use for free,
Yes.
like, is that, because I think that would be a really incredible offering. You license it out, they can't resell it. The publishers aren't going to use it, but like, teacher in a classroom, a smaller institution, someone doing homeschooling, like if they want to have access to our library, they can have it. That's sort of the type of thing that we've been looking into for the Thought Cafe art library. But is Disney going to do that? Maybe, maybe not.
I don't know.
know.
It's this paradigm shift of like working with the old model of rights management. Like you even had territories, you can't get this in this country and whatnot. Right.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't, it breaks. And like, it's trying to patch a new problem with an old solution, I think. And that, I don't think these bigger companies are embracing remix culture and like the fact that people will just be making their own content and it's going to be way more powerful than Mickey Mouse ever was,
Have
and they're going to be like,
YouTube?
but Mickey Mouse, you can have perfect Mickey Mouse,
Yeah.
Or we'll give you perfect Mickey Mouse. You can't use it, but we'll give it to you if you pay us money. Like that's just not going to work in the future.
No. It could actually backfire in the sense that like a more refined next generation could come up and be like, we don't want any of that old stuff.
Yeah, I can
because
make
we
my
can make
own.
our own stuff. Yeah.
And I can share it with people that know me or that I have shared interests with and they can evolve it and they can remix it. Like I think that a lot of these conversations are missing that the other side of the paradigm.
Yeah.
And
You're right.
I wish that decisions were being made towards, again, that future type of media that we can't name yet. That's generative, it's interactive, and it's remixable.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, well, let's end on like a more positive note. Not that that wasn't positive. I think that was very positive.
Oh shucks, thanks.
Yeah. Let's jump into
so we
something.
just won't ask Ampy another question this episode to end on a positive
Yeah, exactly.
note.
Ampy's cut off for the moment.
For the moment.
I want to jump into this because this is something that I haven't been more excited for an XPRIZE in a really long time.
Yes.
So I'm sure you're familiar with XPRIZE. They have been trying to tackle some of the largest millennium goals, largest, problems facing us today by essentially funding projects, funding challenges. And really the model is based on, if you fund a project, and you have multiple groups competing for that challenge, you're going to get about 10 to 30 times the amount of money invested into it with just the organizations like participating in the challenge than you actually give out in the prize money.
Wow.
The XPRIZE was based on this sort of idea that some people aren't quite aware of, but when Charles Lindbergh actually completed the first solo nonstop transatlantic flight, that was for a $25,000 prize. That was the Orteig Prize, which was notable because there were so many different aviators at the time, engineers at the time who tried to do this crossing. And so way more than $25,000 was, invested into figuring and solving this problem of how to cross the Atlantic with an airplane. And that is the spirit, that is the same concept of, what XPRIZE does. Now, XPRIZE has just announced the world's largest sci-fi film competition, or one of the world's largest. But I think what's so exciting about it is it's all about showing us a future that's worth building. The argument here is pretty straightforward. Most science fiction that we see today is really based on like dystopian future. The reason that is that our memory works much better when assessing danger, right? Because that's what kept us alive, right? We don't tend to remember the positive feelings as much as we probably should, you know?
We just kind of go to sleep. It's comfy.
Yeah. And so, you know, drama and danger and the fears are often what ends up being put into film and put into narrative. And given how fast we're progressing, you know, with technology, with AI development, there is this real desire and this real need for us to, as creators, to embrace a positive utopian future, to start to shape out how we would imagine future can be and should be, right? So that it doesn't sort of run away from us. And what XPRIZE is sort of leaning into is really this sort of Star Trek future versus like a Mad Max future, right? Or versus a Terminator future, let's say. And, you know, Star Trek is famous for being very utopian, sort of like presenting a human future where we've solved for many of the problems that we have today. Fans of Star Trek are very familiar with all sorts of, you know, details around the lore, how we solved, you know, animal farming, and how we solved, you know, how we traveled around the stars as with peacekeeping research and scientific vessels, diplomatic approaches to meeting, you know, aliens around our galaxy, as opposed to a hardcore militarized like colonization
Conquering,
approach.
Attitude.
Really what this prize is all about is bringing filmmakers together to submit a 3-minute trailer that's all about your utopian vision of where technology can take us, you know, in the next 10, 20, 100 years.
Is there a limit to the number of trailers that someone can upload? Because there are so many good ideas.
Yeah.
And I just want to like celebrate this because, you know, I think we even talked in a previous episode about Moltbook and how like we're just watching these AIs converse with each other in fear because they're talking about, you know, fucking over humans or whatever. And but it's like even if they're not conscious, even if there's no consciousness, they're just running out their programming based on the sci-fi and the culture and the storytelling. It's all like, it's inevitable that that intelligent beings will think like that. But, you know, I think it was Yuval Noah Harari in some random interview. I don't know if he stands behind this or he just said it in an interview, but he said that like science fiction was about to be the most valuable medium ever, because science fiction has the ability to invent the future, because science fiction breeds reality. We think the moon is made out of cheese, or that we, you know, see people on the moon. Next thing you know, we're going there. So yeah, like this is such a great idea to shape our storytelling, tell better stories, not just focus on this like cautionary tale, but actually propose solutions to what we're going through right now.
Yeah, no, I love it. I've always been, you know, obviously I love drama, and I love, you know, the Terminator franchise and sci-fi like Aliens.
Oh my God, who doesn't? Yeah, The Matrix.
I also have loved Star Trek my whole life, you know, like I have always been, you know, super into the themes around like a research, scientific, diplomatic armada of ships, you know, exploring the galaxy, as opposed to like a militarized kind of like colonization of planets and stuff like you would see in, you know, some more darker sci-fi.
Optimistic vision.
And like we have so many problems that are going to be, could and can and should be solved with all this incredible technology that's coming out, that I just think we need to be telling those stories. We need to be listening to those stories. We need to be having the younger generation inspired by those stories. So I'm excited. I definitely want to, you know, submit something. I think it's due in like September. Our studio's definitely going to be working on something.
Let's do it now. Let's fill it out
with you. So yeah, I mean, I can't wait. Maybe we'll premiere on this show the stuff that we end up working on.
I've got Seedance too, so it'll just take me like 2 seconds, and
How many of people are going to use Seedance too? You know, the funny thing about this is they are allowing for AI generation.
Of course, you have to.
But it's sponsored by Google, so I believe you need to use Google Tools. You don't have to. It's very specific. You don't have to.
Okay.
But if you do, you got to use the Nano Banana VO3 Flow
is excellent.
suite, which is excellent. It's still very good. And I think, you know, what's important about when I talk to people about using generative technology today, and maybe this is a good sort of ending, and I want to hear your opinion on this. We know that there's an ethical dilemma. There's these things have been trained on IP that exists. But that doesn't mean like, you know, you can't explore them. Just don't make things and then go and like try and sell that, you know, in the marketplace, right? Like we have to be very careful about how we monetize these things that are maybe using models that aren't ethically trained. I think that's where my mind goes lately. You know, but exploring it, testing it, seeing how it works out. I'm sure these submissions aren't going to be used, you know, in some like hardcore commercial way. But when it's used to excite and inspire, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that they should be used in a commercial way by the creator that submits them, you know, like not everybody's going to win some of that $3 million or whatever it is, but like, great. Now you've got an awesome trailer for an optimistic vision of the future. Like go sell it through, like, or make it and put it online and get people to love it. And, it should be commercialized in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think that wraps it up for today. Pietro, thanks so much for being here again. I love these weekly conversations. Amplified Intelligence is produced by Transitional Forms, Thought Cafe, and Future Talk. And we look forward to seeing you guys again next time.